The BRICS alliance has entered a new era of expansion, welcoming 9 additional partner nations, including Uganda, Indonesia and Saudi Arabia. This move reflects a shift in global power dynamics, with BRICS becoming a more globally representative bloc. But with such diversity, what challenges lie ahead for cohesion and strategic focus? And how might Donald Trump's return to the White House shape BRICS' trajectory? To help us unpack these questions, we're joined by Professor John Stremlau, Professor of International Relations at Wits University. Professor Stremlau, it's always good to speak to you. Now, I suppose the best place to start off this conversation is around Donald Trump's assertion that he will not let BRICS take control of the US dollar or not trade in the US dollar, something to that effect. What do you make of that statement that he made a few weeks ago?
I'm the wrong guy to talk to about Donald Trump because I forecast Kamala Harris would win, and I was as shocked as the next guy. And I think that the Democrats need to keep their ears to the ground and find out why people are so disgruntled in the hinterland. But having said that, I mean, Donald Trump is totally unpredictable except for his own self-enrichment and his own vindictiveness and self-centeredness. And so he is talking about an alternative currency, but at the same time, he's developing bitcoins, which could easily be the transactional vehicle for BRICS nations if they wanted to do that. But don't forget that we are still in a sovereign state system, and nations have particular interests that they want to advance. South Africa is uniquely placed, in my view, to work with everybody. I mean, to work with the West, to work with Asia, to work with China, to work with the United States, to work with Russia, and no one can complain about South Africa trying to broker for a positive-sum game.
But the problem with that, Professor, as we all know, is that South Africa got themselves into trouble because of an association with Russia. And we do know that in the highest body in the US Senate, I believe one of the things they talked about was imposing some form of sanctions on South Africa or withdrawing the AGOA on South Africa.
Well, now, Hugo, you're talking about a very interesting and complex subject, but I would think that the South African and the Brazilian criticisms of Biden's policy towards Israel and America's policy toward Israel with regard to the Gaza, and that looks like it's going to be more pro-Israeli, given the ex-governor of Arkansas going out as ambassador if Trump has its way. And I think that there are real differences between the U.S. and South Africa historically and currently, but at least the Biden administration was prepared to work with South Africa and maintain friendly relations. Trump and the 2025 project that I've reviewed does indeed sound ominous in terms of singling out South Africa. Africa will be largely ignored by Trump, I think. That's my forecast. It was the last time. But not South Africa. South Africa looms large in the congressional right-wing theater, and I think that one page that might be torn out of the ANC's playbook back in the day was that they appealed over the heads of the government of the day and mounted an anti-apartheid movement. Now, that could not be possible today, but it is a reminder that Ambassador Rasool has a really tough job ahead of him in navigating with the unpredictability of the Trump administration. And by the way, on tariffs, the tariffs it's a very popular idea, but it's in the hinterland, in his constituency, in his core constituency. But for Trump, it just means that he can extract fees and concessions and support from those he exempts from tariffs, both the countries and more importantly, the corporations, the billionaires who are surrounding him.
Professor, how do you think the inclusion of so many new members will affect the bloc's unity and strategic objectives? And obviously the threat of Trump and what he's threatened to do, which you've said is ominous, is going to be a key factor moving forward.
Well, I wonder whether Trump is even going to show up at the G20, because the U.S. is going to be supposedly the chairman next year after South Africa. And I know that Cyril Ramaphosa hopes to lure him here, but yet he is so unpredictable. I wouldn't waste time forecasting his behavior. But on the other hand, there is limits to what the BRICS can do collectively, because they are a real conglomeration of different national interests and identities. And same is true with the G20. You always wonder whether in international organizations the sum is the whole is larger than the sum of the individual sovereign nations, because they all have their particular interests to pursue. And the expansion of the BRICS, which I'm watching with great interest, and I think is reflective of the desire for geopolitical and economic political more influence in the world. The U.S. is declining in its influence in the West, is declining. I'm reviewing a book, Westlessness, now by Samir Puri, and I'm convinced that this is not a new phenomenon, by the way. Back in 94, 95, I wrote an article for foreign policy on Clinton's dollar diplomacy, and that was all about the BEMs, and BEMs, the 10 BEMs, and really I compared the list, and it's really like the BRICS Plus, and of course BRICS was a formulation of Jim O'Neill at Goldman Sachs back in 2008. And so, these things are very interdependent, but at the same time, you're in a world of sovereign states, and let's not forget that, with their own identities.
So you speak of sovereign states with their own identities, but they've come together under this umbrella body of BRICS, hopefully to see how to serve a common purpose. And one of those purposes has been a shift away from the United States dollar and allow each country to use its own currency or come up with a common currency. Just walk us through the implications of this vis-a-vis the hawk eye of Donald Trump in the United States looking over these countries that want to shift away or shift focus from the United States dollar.
Well, I'm very cynical about Trump, so bear with me. But, he is recruiting a czar on Bitcoins in the White House. He does have personal financial stakes in Bitcoins, and his son of the latest marriage is trading in Barron. Trump is trading in Bitcoins, and it is an anonymous currency that is going to be very, very tricky. Our son says, Dad, don't invest in Bitcoins, but I will, because I can afford at my age to run certain risks. And so, I think that there is no easy answer for an alternative to the dollar today, but there might well be. I mean, I don't think that the Chinese yuan is likely to be a currency anytime soon, and I don't see a collective currency coming out of the BRICS. I mean, it's just too diverse an organization. I don't see any collective currency coming out of the G20 because it's too diverse. But there will be a declining role for the dollar, for sure. But it takes time, and I just hope that there's not a crisis that derails the peaceful relations between and among the states, and the Chinese American relationship is crucial to manage properly, and I don't have any confidence that Trump and his advisors have a clue about how to conduct international relations.
So let's talk about Africa and its growing representation in BRICS, and how does all this play in shaping its global agenda, if you will?
Well, Ethiopia and Egypt and the two countries that are most in line, but you mentioned Uganda and Senegal is also, and possibly even Nigeria, but Nigeria hasn't shown great interest in the BRICS so far. But nevertheless, they all carry their own agendas into the BRICS, and if they can act collectively, fine. But the early indications are it's going to be a very difficult process, because the BRICS, like the G20, and so many of these consultative groups, if they can cooperate in collective purpose, fine. But they very, very thin soup, in my experience. But it's part of a long struggle that it reflects the declining role of the West and Westlessness, and that's going to continue. But it's got to be properly managed, and South Africans know that, and Cyril Ramaphosa knows it very, very well, and he's trying to balance both his, the opposition that is very popular here to the U.S. policy of supporting Israel, and I think the World Court effort by the South Africans is commendable. But you have a Security Council permanent member who's violated the fundamentals of the Security Council and the UN by violating the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. So, it's a messy world, and let's just try to keep. And Brazil and South Africa are I think the two voices that are most responsible for collective action in the BRICS. In India and China are real rivals, and Russia is an outlier, wants to prove that it's not isolated by the West. And if South Africa can encourage moderation by Putin in a peaceful settlement of the Ukraine situation, fine.
Now, do you or do you not foresee BRICS becoming a viable alternative to Western-led institutions like the G7 or the IMF, Professor?
No. The international financial institutions have been around for a long time, and they're not going anywhere. And the G7 is really interesting because they share certain values. They included briefly, until the invasion of Crimea, the Russians and the G8 and under Yeltsin, but that didn't go anywhere. The solidarity between Western Europe and Japan, and to some extent South Korea, but the big economies of the West, who are declining as a proportion of global economies, and so the aspirations of the BRICS are fully understandable and fully justified and fully supportive, but the national interests and identities of these states still features very prominently in their deliberations, and so you're always struggling. And I say that I was writing about the big emerging markets back in 30 years ago, and it's progressed. And BRICS is a reflection of that, but it's got a long way to go.
Professor John Stremlau, Honorary Professor of International Relations at Wits University. Always great to speak to you, unpacking for us the entrance of new countries into BRICS. All right, a reminder.